Carney. I'm from Comcast. I spoke a little bit this morning. I'll probably go through a little bit of the same type of information to lay the presentation out today. With me today are two of the folks on my team that'll be presenting along with me today. Kousalya Alapati will be coming up after myself. Kousalya is the manager that drove the project that we'll speak about today, drove the proof of concept activities, and then the overall, architecture in the project. And then Ed Dolphin's one of our DevOps engineers. He will come up and speak a little bit about our DevOps environment, some of the monitoring, and tools that we use for the product. So essentially at Comcast, we've really had a transformation over the past couple of years, really focusing on, improving our customer experience. So in my team, we develop a lot of applications, services, microservices that are used by a lot of the internal applications within Comcast and some of the external applications that our end customers use. Today we're going to talk about a tool and application that we have developed that is used primarily by internal Comcast applications. The goal is to enable the users of those internal applications, primarily folks in a support role, technician role, to improve their ability to get through the workflows that they're involved with, whether it's part of a sales process, a support process, an install process, whatever it might be. So customer satisfaction is sort of like the primary goal that we have, each of us have sort of in our plans. Everything is about the customer surveys and the satisfaction level. So it makes our jobs easy because that's the center of everything that we do. As I mentioned this morning, we went on a journey a couple years ago to go out to all of our call centers and warehouses and work with the folks that are working on the vans and the trucks, all the technicians. We went to Xfinity stores. We went to places that process all the checks that people mail in. We went to a lot of different places trying to find, all of the end customers that are using our services to understand what problems they're having and look for common patterns of things that we can then turn around and solve. And what we found was that there's a lot of different settings, a lot of different tools, a lot of different roles, a lot of different workflows that people were doing. But we did see a common problem where they all were diligently trying to take notes, good customer notes of what the customer was experiencing, what they were requesting to be done, and then the technician or support person would then try and take diligent notes on what actions needed to be taken and the plan. So we saw that, but the challenge that we saw was that these folks had 4 or 5 different applications opened up, that they were, hunting and pecking, looking for information, entering comments in this system, then going over here and entering these comments over in this other system. There were lots of limitations on the kind of comments that they could put in. So it really was, pretty laborious, and it took them a long time to try and get, the information that they needed. And being a Comcast customer for a long time and having to call into support, at times, I started to get an awareness of why it took so long sometimes to get the problem, understood and resolved. So, but it was good to be on the other side to try and understand and learn that a little bit more. So we partnered with a team that builds an Einstein product, which is a centralized product that they're moving all these users towards. And they were putting out a new version, an Einstein 360, which was geared towards capturing, the 360-degree view, of everything that goes on with a customer. Whether it's a timeline of all events that's happening, in their area and with their account. And they came to us, and then we spoke to them about a proposal of building sort of a unified notes view where all notes, no matter what type of information, could be captured in one central place. And this is where we really, started taking a look at the Couchbase, solution, as part of that. So again, what we found was all these different kind of note types and the different roles. Some roles couldn't see certain note types, and so it really was, seemed to be a pretty complicated kind of setup, with some legacy applications. So to the time that it, took these poor folks to go and find the information that they needed, or to get to the right screen to do, add a note, what was just, it was painful to watch. To be honest with you. And then there was just no basic search capability, to look across these things. So, it was ripe, for, us to come along and build something to help them, in their daily jobs. So, some of the basic challenges you face, because we were going to be impacting a lot, of people across the entire company. These are the tools that they use every single day. They're trained on it. They know how to do it in their sleep. So we knew we would have to kind of address this is the way I always did things. We needed to make it easy to use, because just the thought of training, over 100,000 people was not too, didn't look like too much fun. So we needed to make it easy to use. And then the last thing was that we wanted to build this unified platform, make it simple, but by no means did we understand, the detailed requirements of what everybody needed. There's just too many roles, too many touch points with all the customers for us to possibly figure out all of the exact detail requirements. So we needed something that was, also very flexible. So, these were our ultimate goals, that, we wanted a single view. We wanted to make sure that, they had a tool in their hands so they could accurately capture anything the customer was saying and anything that they felt needed to be part of the action plan to resolve what the issue was. We needed to get rid of any limitations. There were no limitations allowed, in the solution. We went in with that mindset. And then it had to be accessible from anywhere. Any other, Comcast internal tool, had to be able to get to this single source of information. So what we did is a lot of work that Kousalya and Ed will talk a little bit about later. But we did build a unified, platform with Couchbase. They partnered with us. We did some proof of concept work. We did some initial, alpha versions. Went through a lot of testing. Went through a lot of troubleshooting. But we were able to build that single application. The search capability is there. We have unlimited capacity at this point in time. And we have not hit any, issues where one of our end users is trying to do something and we haven't been able to, tweak the system to do it. So we've put in some additional profane language management capabilities, because as you're capturing a lot of people's information flowing back and forth, you want to make sure that it's appropriate. So that was sort of a late-breaking requirement that came in. So we started out with our residential support team. We started out very slowly with them. I think they were very hesitant because they didn't know how, intuitive it really would be when they got it out to the field to use. We were also very hesitant because we weren't sure exactly how it was going to perform, even though we did all of our testing and everything looked good. But it was a new solution. Things went really well, really fast, to the point that they asked us to, speed up the deployment and really open it up to all of their support reps for residential support. Then we thought we'd have to go around and sort of market the success a little bit, but we never had to do that. It sort of marketed itself, and next thing you knew, we had, other business divisions coming in asking us to, take them on as well. So we've turned sort of into an onboarding shop versus the development shop, helping folks kind of get ready for this. So we have the business customer support on retail. We're doing technical support now. We've got several other, folks in the queue. One of the things I'm most thankful for is why we chose Couchbase was the adaptability. So when we were defining the original note types to go out, again, we did not assume that we knew everything about, all the workflows and what people would need. So we've had to add additional note types very quickly, very easily. It's a nice administrative tool that the team built. We have a few more in flight right now. So again, the adaptability was incredibly important because we didn't want to force feed, a certain system defined a certain way. We wanted the business units to be able to take and say, listen, this is how I want to do my work, so I need this, this, and this. So that has been a tremendous benefit, using Couchbase to date. So with that, I'll bring it over to Kousalya to talk a little bit about why NoSQL.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. So as Scott mentioned earlier, we went on this journey about 2 years ago where we started looking at the legacy billing system, which was kind of 30-year-old system. And there are multiple places where you can write notes, and we tried to build a consolidated system that CAEs, customer account executives, are able to leverage to know exactly what happened with an account. So there are some fundamental questions that I'm going to go through, which will help you guys understand why we picked Couchbase, what are the drivers behind that. So one of the key drivers for NoSQL is, as Scott was mentioning earlier, we needed to make sure that we are giving that flexibility to define the new data structures that are really needed by end customers. And second is the huge data growth. It's been 9 months that this application has been launched, and we are close to 40 million nodes. And as Scott was mentioning earlier, there are some new requirements that are coming in, and it's a growing platform. So for us, the primary drivers were huge growth, scalability, availability of the app, and you will know when Ed starts talking about DevOps and how we really, see how we really measure our application performance. Another driver behind the decision was also requirements driven, which is, technicians wanted to see popular hashtags that get added on an account, just like the way Twitter shows, popular hashtags. So the next fundamental question is, why did we choose Couchbase? So Couchbase, we have spent a lot of time building proof of concept apps using multiple technologies, especially in the NoSQL world, because of the business requirements that we got. And when we did the proof of concept, obviously we took them for a spin. We ran some performance tests, did some benchmarking, and we have realized that Couchbase has got pretty good throughput for the use case, for the business problem that we are trying to solve. And there are other Comcast teams, which are already using Couchbase for really important use cases, like the application that Scott was bringing up earlier, Einstein 360, which gives you a 360 overview of what is happening with the customer's account. So that particular application also uses Couchbase, and then there is Data Grid, which is the primary caching layer, for billing data. So with all these teams using Couchbase and with the required throughput and SLAs that we had to meet, Couchbase seemed like the rightful solution for us. And our level 1 support team was already on board with Couchbase. They knew, how Couchbase works, and they were very well trained in case, if an issue happens, they know what to do. So those were the major drivers behind why we picked Couchbase. And currently the app is performing really well. We had to do some tuning, and there are multiple folks at Couchbase that actually helped us to make this app go live. So it's a wonderful experience for us. So I'll talk a little bit about the Couchbase profile that we're currently using, as well as the architecture of our application. As you can see here, we are using a little bit older version of Couchbase as well as Nickel SDK. We started off with like 3 nodes, 3-node cluster. We have a couple of data centers where our Couchbase nodes are deployed. So due to the growth, the data growth, and when we started digging deep into Couchbase, like we ended up we realized that in order to get the benefits that we need, we have to use Nickel. So to scale a Nickel app, we obviously needed to expand our nodes and also work with Couchbase team to figure out what's the best architecture to, again, solve the problem that we are trying to solve. So in the beginning, it was 3-node cluster, then now it became 6-node cluster on each data center. 2 of them are serving index and query nodes, and then 4 are data nodes on VMs, which kind of fits the commodity hardware model. The index and query nodes are pretty robust. And then the VMs are more, there's replication that happens between the data nodes. So usage details, which actually will be covered by Ed more in detail. So currently, I think when we wrote these slides, we were looking at 30 million nodes, and now we are we are moving towards 40 million nodes. Our disk spaces, they're like 80 gig for indexes and 16 gig for the amount of data that we are storing. The interesting part in our in Comcast environment is network zones, like Couchbase unified nodes being a place where we really needed to store some personally identifiable information, which is PII. We had to use Black Network Zone, which is highly secure in Comcast. And our application tier is deployed on another secure network zone. So there were some some tricky situations that we ran into while we were setting up things, like we need to make sure that firewalls are punched and all these things are taken care of with respect to connectivity. So I will go through a little bit of the architecture. So as you can see here, so our application itself, there are multiple instances of the application that are deployed on Cloud Foundry. And the app on Cloud Foundry talks to Couchbase cluster directly. As you can see, Comcast started evolving. We used to deploy apps on WebLogic before, but now we started migrating more towards Pivotal Cloud Foundry. All our apps are going, getting built there and deployed there. And we are migrating towards DevOps, like where one team takes care of application implementation as well as operations side of the story. Like you clearly look at a lot of improvements, and you're wearing like multiple shoes, and you see some interesting things. Like it's a pretty good learning curve for us as a team. So as you can see here, there is cross data center replication that is happening between the data centers, and I think recently we have run into some issues with some synthetic notes that were getting written which were not getting replicated. And again, the Couchbase team that we work with, they're very responsive. We have built some pretty good contacts here. So it's a complex environment, especially given the fact that you have the app deployed on Cloud Foundry as well as the Couchbase cluster, which is on a secure network zone. When it has, we ran into certain challenges, like when we really need support, like we get asked, hey, can you get us TCP dumps? But the thing is, your app is deployed on Cloud Foundry, and nobody is supposed to know. Nobody is supposed to log into these boxes, right? So that's that has posed a little bit of challenge for us, but I think currently we are at a good place. Like we are using Abdi, Kibana. We know we have all the metrics that we need to see if there is an issue. So having said that, Ed is going to talk through our DevOps environment and how things are structured from a process point of view. Yeah, sure.
So on the, just give us some use cases where you thought of using nickel queries, because if it is a real-time application, why key value was not an option for nickel queries?
Absolutely. So as we were mentioning earlier, so we oh yeah, sure. So let me repeat the question. So the question that this gentleman here is asking is, why were you guys not using KeyVal? What is the driver behind using nickel? So KeyVal is fast performing, as we all know, but the kind of data joins that we had to perform to get what we need drove us into nickel. So it's, we had the use case that we are trying to solve is, I need notes on this account number versus I need notes on a note type, right? So, and we can take it offline. We can show you exactly what drove this, but it's pretty interesting.
And second thing is, like, because any of your Comcast, any of your applications, because this application I believe is definitely need a lot of searches, fetching, that kind of, once people store the notes, when the customer stores the notes, it's not like heavily transactional, right? Is it that?
So yeah, so the question is the app heavily transactional? So the app is definitely heavy transactional because 90% of Comcast notes, like 23 million notes, have got notes on them. Accounts have notes on them, and we are providing the search capabilities to SEAE. Like they can actually search on an account, which is more fine-grained, and also they have the ability to search outside the account. There are some reporting dashboards that we have built on top of it using Couchbase views, which Ed will also go over some metrics. When he goes over that, he'll be showing that.
Hey, don't steal all my thunder.
I'll try not to. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. All right.
No, but thanks for those questions, and feel free to ask at the end. Hopefully we have time. My name's Ed Dolphin, and I'm lucky enough to work for Kousalya and Scott. So we're a DevOps organization. I've heard this mentioned a couple times during our presentation. I guess we could also say DevOps and onboarding. I don't know if we have like a quick little crunchable name for that, because we do a fair amount of onboarding now too, which is a good problem to have because we're getting a lot more use for our app, which is great. So really quickly here, we're also an agile team. I think everyone knows or has some definition of what agile is. I'm not an agile coach or whatever, so I don't know the official book definition. But for me, we plan our work based on our requirements, which kind of change frequently, and that's not a bad thing. That's good to be able to adapt and be flexible. And we also want to deliver small things as quickly as we can. So there's no more wait 6 months to see how it goes in production. We can do small things incrementally. If it blows up or it doesn't work, that's fine. We didn't lose 6 months worth of development work, so that's good. We also have 2-week sprints, which kind of keeps, as a developer, keeps you on your toes. But it took me a little while to adjust to that, but it's manageable. So as a part of DevOps, before this, I was kind of just a software engineer where I would kind of code something, hopefully it would work. I'd check it in, and that'd kind of be it. Someone else would handle the deployment and all this. I was a software engineer, so I didn't want to get my hands dirty with that kind of stuff. But here, we're definitely a different environment than that. So as DevOps, we're not only responsible for the requirements gathering and analysis and things like that, but also the development, the deployment, and support in production. So it's cool to have a little more ownership and a little more responsibility and skin in the game, except when the on-call phone rings at 4 in the morning. But hopefully that doesn't happen too much. So on this slide here is kind of like our flow. So after we check in and everything compiles and everything, we use we use GoCD to deploy our app to Cloud Foundry and our various instances, whether they're development, QA, or integration. And that's where a lot of our testing happens there in those lower environments. And we can also use this Cloud Foundry to kind of roll out gradually into production. At times in an emergency, we can roll out into prod within a couple hours, which is good. Like we don't try to drive 120, but it's good to know if you really had to, you can. So that's good. And we have some of our monitoring tools like Kibana and App Dynamics to keep track of, see how well the app is doing in production. We use Rally to keep track of that's kind of like our day-to-day bread and butter app that we use to track our work in progress, our user stories and things like that. There's also a defect management tool, but I try not to have any use for that. So no defects. Next slide. Here's some metrics that we have for Unified Notes. As you can see from this chart here, it's from February to April, so we had about 100,000 additional, more notes added in April than we did in February. So that's good. It's always good to have growth. So that definitely provides some challenges with respect to scaling or hardware, but overall it's good to be growing. And we utilize Couchbase views for a lot of our metrics like this, where maybe we don't need like instantaneous numbers, but we need kind of a rough estimate. So our views here are very good for that. And as some of the other details here on the slide kind of help show how well Unified Notes have been picked up and have been adapted out in production. So we keep track of our overall number of notes using views, because some of the big stakeholders like to see those numbers. And then we also use for some planning purposes, like the average number of notes added per day of the week or things like that, just to kind of give us an idea of when's a good time to schedule maintenance or things like that. This screen here is one of our monitoring screens. So we always keep track of our load, how many requests we're getting, our response times, as well as our percentage of errors. It's good to keep an eye on this stuff because not only does it keep kind of like a health check on the application, we also can kind of drill down and see how well a specific API is performing, or even from that, how well a specific back end to an API is doing. So just in case if there is an issue in production, we have a better idea of what is going on here. In addition to these third-party monitoring tools, we also take advantage of Couchbase Admin Console. They have a couple screens where we keep track of some metrics, like how many queries take more than 1 second, because that usually is indicative of a problem. We also look at our average query response time from Couchbase to make sure that there's no kind of network latency or things like that. And we also keep an eye of our index scan latency just to make sure that our index servers are processing the queries as expected. So with that note, I think I'm going to turn it over to Scott if there are no questions, or maybe we'll have questions at the end, whatever.
Thanks, Ed. So just to kind of wrap this up, and then we can open up, see if you guys have any other questions. But it's been really successful to get this product completed and rolled out. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to continue to be rolling this out. A key thing to mention is that, I think both Ed and Kousalya said the same things, that without the collaboration, of Couchbase, I'm not sure we would have gotten through some of the challenges. Specifically with some of the Cloud Foundry deployments and some of the network zone challenges that we had, some of the nickel challenges that we faced. So, one thing I always like to do is look back and say, hey, would we do everything the same way again? For the most part, I think 85–90% of what we chose to do, we would do again, but there's definitely some things we would do differently. But again, it was a great experience for us just not to test out the technology, but also to test out Couchbase themselves. Because there's a lot more we want to take this product than there's other products that we have going on. So, it's a testimony to them to be there when we needed them, especially at the 4 o'clock in the morning calls. Then we had a few of those. So, good feedback, right? We're Comcast. We like to survey people and get feedback. So, we've gotten positive feedback, great acceptance, as we've talked about earlier, and we're excited about that. So, so what's coming down the pike? As Ed mentioned, we're doing a lot of onboarding right now, and we're going to continue that. There's other projects going on that are looking for, the right data store solution. So they're coming to us and saying, hey, what did you guys do? How's it working out? Because they have similar kinds of requirements, that they want to evaluate, Couchbase and some of the other NoSQL solutions for. We've got a lot of growth going on, some pretty aggressive service level agreements we have to meet. We're looking at multimedia attachments is a big thing. That's probably the number one request that we have right now is how can we get multimedia attachments to these notes? So that's something that we're looking at closely, working closely with Couchbase to figure out if there's other folks that have done it. If you've done anything with multimedia and Couchbase, we'd like to talk to you. But that's a big thing that we'll be taking a look at. Looking at, possibly replacing, nickel with subqueries. So we're taking a hard look at those use cases. Can we re-architect some things, do some things differently there? We have the Couchbase version upgrade that Ed's already working on. And then essentially, our goal is to be the one single repository for all nodes for the entire company, no matter what the situation is. And I think we're well on our way. We have to continue to earn the good reputation, that we've started with, and we'll need Couchbase's help to continue that. But that is our ultimate goal for this product. So with that, I'll open it up to any other questions that anybody might have. We've got 5 minutes. Just got my eyes checked, so I'm good. Yes, sir.
Have you looked at using or considered using like this Couchbase Lite in the field to sync data back with the base?
Yeah, it's actually, do you work for Couchbase?
No.
Because they keep bringing that up. So we have talked about it with them. We haven't looked at it just yet. At this point, we're just trying to make sure that we are going to be the solution. And then I think we need to expand and do some other things like that, but we haven't looked at it yet. Keep firing away. First one to raise their hand.
I was just curious on your experience with Cloud Foundry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I kind of brought it up a little
So
bit.
the question was just kind of with respect to Cloud Foundry, what's our experience been there?
Yeah.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, so, so we ran into a little bit of challenges, like especially with deploying our app to Cloud Foundry, as I was mentioning earlier. I think, when we needed some network troubleshooting, that's when we really ran into trouble because we get asked, can I get a TCP dump? We're like, I don't know who can give us that because nobody has access to these systems, and there is a very lean team at Comcast that manages Cloud Foundry itself. So we ran into some trouble there, but we were able to work around those problems by deploying our applications on standalone VMs and capturing what they wanted. So we had some workarounds to do, but it was fun.
Yeah, keep alive, we're getting lost. And
Yeah, keep alive, we're getting lost, and it's very important to see those transactions when you're skipping network zones.
So it's been some education with the Couchbase support team as well, saying, I know what you're asking for, but we can't give you that, so how do we meet in the middle? So we continue to work through sort of, workarounds and solutions, but it's been, a little bit of a learning curve for all of us. And the team had to actually go ahead and build, some other tooling around this to enable, some of that as well. So again, it was not something that we sort of had in the game plan, but the team did a really nice job in reacting and started building some of our own tools.
So it's just your application deployed in Cloud Foundry. So what about Couchbase? Is it a plan to Couchbase plus Cloud Foundry to deploy Couchbase in Cloud Foundry?
Can I take that question?
Yes, ma'am? Repeat the question.
So the question that's being asked is, so you have deployed your app to Cloud Foundry. What is your plan to deploy Couchbase on Cloud Foundry? So that's a very interesting question because we kind of look at that question a lot. When we started this project with kind of at Comcast, cloud was really catching up fast. Like you've got Pluto Cloud Foundry, where you can deploy apps, but when it came to storing the data, data as service was really not available. So it again goes back to what are your data needs? Can cloud really scale for your data needs, or can you use Amazon Web Services, or where obviously Couchbase is going to be deployed? And those kind of communications did really happen. It's been a couple of years that we had those conversations, and I think we at Comcast are still trying to see what is really involved on, data as service, like to deal with data as service.
So we're at our time, but Kousalya, Ned, and I will be right out here. So please come on. I know there's some other questions. We're here to answer and share everything that we've been through. So thanks for your attention. Thanks for the questions as well. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay.